And, of course, coming off that wild win for the Baltimore Ravens yesterday, who else do we want to catch up with than our friend, the host of the Bleav in Ravens podcast? He is former Ravens tight end, Mr. Dan Wilcox. Dan, I've seen a lot of things, man. I've seen a lot of crazy, crazy football games, but, bro, that one yesterday was right up there, dude. Thanks for taking the time for us.
Man, I appreciate you having me on, Glenn. I agree with you 100%. I felt like everything that could possibly go wrong for Baltimore went wrong, and we still found a way to win the game. That's the sign of a great team, of a championship caliber team when you see those type of things happen. Super excited about the Ravens.
I'm really glad you said it that way, Dan, because that was like the only take that I could come up with immediately after the game, which is just like, hey, look, there are still the defense was an issue yesterday, and there were decisions that were weird. But ultimately, the story was somehow, some way, they figured out a way to win the football game. And you need a little bit of luck involved with that, but that's football, right? It works that way sometimes. And I do think, to your point, like that really good football teams do that. They figure out a way when their backs are against the wall to somehow walk out of a game with a W.
Yeah, man, it's been a tough season already, and we had those two losses early. One against Oakland and one against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then when you look back, you start to be like, dang, man, we could easily be 5-0 right now. And that's kind of how the Ravens start off kind of every year. You lose a couple of games that you're scratching your head, why you lost. Sometimes it's players, sometimes it's coaches, but when you win a game like this, of this caliber, going into overtime, having to claw your way and fight your way back into the game every single series, it was like this big gunslinging grudge match. And when you think about it, man, I think Harbaugh said it best after the game, man. It was a great team win. It took the offense, it took the defense, it took special teams, it took the coaching staff, it took everybody to win this game. So, I was super excited. I don't know how we came away with the win because it didn't seem like in the fourth quarter it was going to be ours. But those are the ugly wins that you need sometimes to kind of build a character inside that locker room to get these guys on the same page.
Dan, when I say the words 3 tight end offense, does that sound like a symphony playing in your ears?
Man, it reminds me of the Darnell Dinkins, Daniel Wilcox, Todd Heat days.
Man,
yeah.
It is wild.
I love it.
Like, so, do you feel like this is something that can be sustainable, that the Ravens can interchangeably use all 3 of these dudes in different ways all season and keep defenses head spinning?
I absolutely think so. It's one of those things where you really take a look at every single team that you play. Every team has different defenses, and you're going to have to scheme against those defenses. You want to attack their weaknesses. You don't want to attack their strengths. You want to take advantage of everything they're going to give you week in and week out. And it's going to be some games where 3 tight ends on the field may be your best solution. And, Zay Flowers may not get as many balls or as many touches, So it's just, to me, you got to take advantage of what teams are giving you. If they're really weak on the outside, on the corner spots, then you got Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Aguilar got to have a freaking day. But if they're weak in the inside with the safeties and the linebackers and, the tight ends, let the tight ends have a ball. Why not? And then you just, you always do your box count, 7 or more in the box, you gotta throw that, you don't want to run it. If they only got 6 in the box, run it every single time. 6 or less in the box, run the ball every single time. Derrick Henry may have a field day on some teams because of that. So you do what you have to do to come out victorious every single week.
Well, and I think that was one of the encouraging things from yesterday, that like in the 2 weeks prior, we saw a lot of, hey, they won, dominating, playing bully ball. They showed yesterday that they can do it the other way too, right? Like if they have to go away from the run, they're plenty capable of winning that way as well.
Yeah, it didn't seem like Lamar threw the ball 48 times, but he threw the ball 48 times.
Right.
That's a lot, That's a lot of freaking drop back in passing, man, and he did a phenomenal job. He started off kind of slow, and as the game went on, he started turning to Action Jackson and started turning into Houdini and started making some plays happen that are very typical of a Lamar Jackson type player, and I was excited to see him kind of get into a rhythm. And Cincinnati, you got to take your hats off to Cincinnati, man. He did a phenomenal job of trying to mix things up defensively to confuse us and to keep us on our toes.
He is Dan Wilcox. He is with us here on GCR. Dan, I'll bring it up and we can have some fun with it. Obviously, a lot of conversation last week, and I know you guys will be talking about it on Bleav in Ravens, surrounding the social media activity of one Davante Adams, who was trolling the idea of coming to Baltimore. And it's funny because there's like these two very divergent opinions. There's the group of people in town that are like, hey, yeah, always. They want every player. Like every time anybody's name comes up they've heard of, they're like, yeah, make that guy a Baltimore Raven. And then there's the group of people that say, hey, things are going pretty well here. Maybe you don't want to rock the boat, right? Like maybe the offense is in a good position and you don't want to bring in anybody else that might screw that up a little bit. Where are you at about the idea of Davante Adams or another maybe high-level wide receiver heading up to the trade deadline here in a few weeks?
I don't know if you rock the boat. I really don't, man. If you watch the Bleav in the Ravens podcast like the last 2 weeks ago, I had Keon on, Ray Lewis's little brother.
Yeah, Keon Lattimore, love that guy. One of my favorites.
Yeah, I had Keon Lattimore on. Yep, and then I brought up the notion of how many reps offense normally gets per every game. On a good game, you're going to average between 60 and 70 reps per game. But on average, it's usually roughly about 60 reps per week. And when you have 60 reps per week, you got to think about who's going to get the ball 60 times. You're gonna break. If you break that down, Derrick Henry has to get the ball at least 10 to 20 times a game. Justice Hill maybe another 5 to 10 times a game. Lamar Jackson probably 10 times a game. You're already at freaking 40 snaps right there. So you only got 20 snaps left. You want to try to get the ball to Zay, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, Aguilar, Bateman. And then when Keaton Mitchell come back, now you got another issue. So now if you bring somebody in like Davante Adams, who should see at least 10 targets a game, along with Zay Flowers, it's going to eliminate some of your real key guys. It's going to start to cause some kind of dissension into the locker room, and guys are going to feel like they're not good enough. And if you watched the show last week, we had Brian Billick on, and he pretty much said the exact same thing. Like, you got to worry about the chemistry of your team at some point, and bringing in a guy like Davante Adams, who wants the ball, who craves the ball, who deserves the ball, who's that phenomenal that he should get it. Now you're really rocking the boat. Now it's going to take carries, or it's going to take passes away from guys that you already have. And we have a pretty dynamic roster. This is a pretty stacked offense right now.
Can I ask it this way, Dan? Do you think at all about but guys are going to get hurt, and they're going to get hurt after the deadline when you don't have the ability to go trade for somebody? And then maybe even add in the idea that, like, hey, if you make the move, then Kansas City can't, or then some of these other teams that you might end up competing against in the AFC. Buffalo looks like they could use a wide receiver badly at this point. Does any of that matter to you, or is it still not? I can't weigh that over the impact that it's going to have on your own team.
Well, when I look at where we are in the receiver room, I feel fine with where we are. We also got Tylan Wallace that's just kind of sitting back there, not getting much reps at all.
It was nice to see him get involved, especially after that punt issue early on in the game. It was going to be a tough day for Tylan yesterday, but he ended up making some really nice catches.
Absolutely, man. So I feel like we're stacked in the receiver room. I don't feel like you ruffle those feathers at all. If it was a next year type thing and you bring a Davante in, I say go for it. But right now, I don't think it helps your team. I think if anything, it kind of, puts you in a worse situation. And I think Monken is starting to kind of get comfortable with the talent that he has, and he's starting to try to figure out exactly how to pass this thing around and try to get everybody involved on these wins. You see, Likely had 2 touchdowns yesterday. Kolar had a touchdown yesterday. Bateman had a touchdown yesterday. This was a good vibe. It was a good move, man. And Zay had over 100 yards receiving still. And it was like his first game that he's had. I think he's went off for 100 yards. And it's because you have so much talent, and you got to decipher who you're going to get the ball to. It's only so many reps you get every game. With 60 reps, and you got about 9 guys that spread the ball out to, man, it's kind of hard to decipher that. So you got to be careful. I knew I was only gonna get the ball 2 or 3 times a game when I played.
And you were cool.
At the most 5.
You were cool. I can live with that. I'll make the most out of those 2 to 3 times. That's the way that
I did. I did. And you got as an OC, you have to figure that out. And then once it leaves the OC's mouth to the quarterback, now Lamar has to figure that out. Because if we don't get the ball and we're wide open, we think it's Lamar's fault. So he has to take that heat.
That's true.
So
that's true. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. He is Dan Wilcox, Bleav in Ravens. Another couple of minutes with him here on GCR. Dan, I feel like you and I talked after week 2, and everybody brought up that the pass defense was the bottom of the NFL, and I was very dismissive of it. Hey, that's an anomaly. But here we are now after week 5, and it continues to be an issue. And obviously yesterday it was a dramatic issue. Can you look at that still as like growing pains with a new coordinator, or at some point do you start to feel a little bit alarmed by how, like, I mean, for most of the second half yesterday, it was easy doesn't even think it's the right word. Like, it was almost no restriction whatsoever for Joe Burrow and for the Bengals offense trying to go down the field.
Yeah, I mean, no, Joe Burrow and the Bengals are like our kryptonite, man. Every time we play them, it's like something dramatic happens. Jamar Chase goes off for 200 yards almost every time we play them. I mean, that was before Zach Orr. So, I mean, it can't be a Zach Orr issue all of a sudden. To me, I think what happens is anytime you get a new player that comes on the field during the game, a good offensive coordinator is going to go at that guy right away. You know, like as soon as you get a new DB or a new safety or a new corner or a new linebacker come in the field, you're going to run the ball at that linebacker and you're going to throw the ball at that corner and you're going to make them have to earn their check. You know, so when you get a new DC, I think every offensive coordinator in the league licks their chops and they try to figure out how they can exploit the new DC. You know, the new rookie defensive coordinator that comes in that's kind of that's learning himself and trying to figure things out, and he's putting in his coverages and stuff, and he's talking to the secondary and his coaches on his staff to try to figure out what's the best thing to put in. And as they collaborate and put these plays in, these coverages in, the other teams are scheming them against those plays. They put in cover 3 beaters and cover 4 beaters and cover 2 beaters and cover 1 beaters to try to beat you. And your guys have to just play more solid. You know, sag a little bit more or settle. You don't give up anything over the top, but take everything away. You know, take everything away over the top and come up and corral and make tackles, you know, in front of you. And a lot of times we're missing tackles and doing things like, I mean, Jamar Chase took a freaking tunnel, like not even a tunnel screen, just a regular screen to the house about 70 yards yesterday. When you see those type of things, those are just missed tackles and great blocks by the receivers on their side of the ball and us just not being in position to make a play. You know, that's not the DC fault. You know, you got to come up and make a play. You got to make a tackle. You see all these dramatic plays that happen week in and week out. And we just got to do better as a defensive team of corralling and getting to the ball and making tackles, man. We got to get back to playing Ravens football. We commit to stopping the run, but then we give up pass plays that we shouldn't give up. And with the DBs that we have, there's no excuse for some of the stuff that we're giving up. We just got to do better.
Can you walk me through, because, you know, everybody will point out it was Chase yesterday. In week 2, it was Davante Adams. In week 3, it was CeeDee Lamb, although it took a little while. But, like, the Ravens, it feels like philosophically over the years, like it's not Zach Orr. It feels aren't the team that says, hey, whatever we have to do, this one guy isn't going to beat us. Like, they don't do the Bill Belichick thing where we say, we will pay all of the attention to this guy and you let other guys beat you. And I bring that up with a lot of people around the league, and they say, well, that's not really common. Like, teams don't really – the other players are too good. These are NFL players. You can't just say, so be it, we'll let this other guy beat us because he's going to beat you. What do you make of the thought process of maybe the Ravens, specifically given the way that we've seen these 3 wide receivers eat them alive this year, maybe should adapt more of that Belichickian philosophy of whatever we do, we will send all of the attention towards this one guy and not allow this one guy to be the one that beats us?
I agree with that. I agree with that philosophy hands down. That was Rex Ryan's take. That was Brian Billick's take. That was Harbaugh's take when he first came in the league. You know, we're going to always take away their best player. On offense, we're going to eliminate the best defensive end, whoever that rush in is. We're going to chip them. We're going to help them out. We're going to double team them. We're going to triple team them. We're going to do whatever we got to do to take it away. There's no different from another team putting a spy on Lamar Jackson. You know how dynamic he is.
Sure.
Keep him in the pocket and then put a spy on him. If he tries to step up, man, you go make a play. You know, so to me, that's what you have to do. You have to put your best player on their best player, and you got to tell your best player to man up against them. The problem is in our secondary and at the cornerback position, I'm not sure who's our best corner anymore. I'm not sure if it's Marlon Humphrey. I'm not sure if it's Brandon Stevens. I'm not sure if it's the new kid, Nate Wiggins, who I still think hasn't came into his own yet. You know, and then we have some other guys that played, you know, last year, and we've got a couple guys that are down and hurt right now too as well. You know, but I'm not sure who's our best corner. Marlon is, you know, by far had the most interceptions this year. I think he got 3 on the season already, and he's getting them in very pivotal times of the game. So if I had to lean towards anybody, I'd lean towards Marlon Humphrey. he's the old savvy vet back there. But then again, at the same time, he's been banged up and hurt so much that I still think he's a fraction of what he used to be.
All right, before I let you go, the line is out for Ravens Commanders, which is it's so juicy. But the Ravens are favored by a touchdown in that game, and that feels like some Nick Saban rat poison to me. Like, that feels really icky to me, man. Like, this is Jaden Daniels that we're talking about. Like, Dan Quinn feels like he's got something cooking there. I feel like this game screams this is going to be a lot more interesting than them coming in here and getting their brains beat in by the Ravens on Sunday.
Yeah, I love Dan Quinn as a head coach. I went to spend about a week with him when he was down here with the Falcons. My old coach from Baltimore, Wade Harmon, was the tight end coach for the Falcons. So, go ahead, Glenn.
No, go ahead, Dan. I had forgotten about that entirely. That's cool.
Yeah. So I spent the week with Dan Quinn and the Falcons when he was down here. I love him as a head coach, man. I would run through a brick wall for Dan Quinn. And I think that's what you're seeing is happening right now in Washington with the Commanders. He's taking his young quarterback and they've inserted him into a role the right way, and they've nurtured it, they've fed it, they've babied it the right way, and they've treated it the right way, and they're allowing him to do the things that make him successful, and it's starting to show up big time for the Commanders, man. I'm super proud of that organization, super proud of that team, but at the same time, they got to see us this week,
Yep.
So I'm ready to see them fall to the wayside this week. This will be their first L of the season. And I Bleav wholeheartedly that the Ravens staff will take this game as serious as it is, and then they will put in the right things to stop Jaden Daniels on defense. And on offense, we'll do everything we can to protect our quarterback, Lamar, and we'll push this ball down the field to our key guys. And I think it's going to be a heck of a battle. This is that battle of the Beltways thing that we've always dealt with, the battle of I-95, who owns the territory. A lot of their fans are our old fans when we were the Baltimore Colts. It's time for us to go get those fans back.
Amen.
So I would love to see us come out of this thing victorious. A touchdown to me sounds about right. I think it's going to be a very close game.
All right. You remind everybody real quick about Bleav in Ravens?
Yeah, absolutely. Join us for the Bleav in the Ravens podcast, man. We usually shoot 2 times a week. Last week we had Brian Billick on. We got another special guest coming on this week. We'll shoot again and record on Wednesday of this week, man. It's a good friend of mine, a former player of the Baltimore Ravens. Ooh. And I'm excited, man. The podcast is taking off and doing really well, and I want to continue to push it and continue to do great things with it.
Love it, brother. Dan Wilcox, always appreciate you, man. Hope you, the family, are good, and let's talk again real soon, all right?
Absolutely, Glenn. Thanks for having me on, brother.